From first principles, a shared acknowledgement of the divinity of an objective higher power, namely of God, seems to be the only commonality found between two very distinct ideologies, liberalism and religious fundamentalism. Liberalism, built on the foundational first principles of utilitarianism, the harm principle, and consequentialism, saw its momentous adoption in the 19th century and was founded by who is called by many the father of liberalism, philosopher John Locke, and was later on furthered by the writings of historian and political philosopher Montesquieu. Promotes the notion of liberty, consent of the governed, and equality before the law. The utility of liberalism at the time of its inception, along with many other points, was seen in its affirmation of the concept of equality. This is particularly highlighted in the Declaration of the Right of Man and of the Citizen, which called for the destruction of aristocratic privileges by proclaiming an end to feudalism after the French Revolution in the 19th century. And after the earlier account of the Declaration of Independence of the United States in the year of 1776. On the other hand, the connotation of religious fundamentalism marks more recent relevancy compared to that of liberalism. The plethora of religions encompassed in the term aside, fundamentalism means an unwavering attachment to a set of beliefs. Fundamentalism has come to be applied to a tendency among certain groups, mainly although not exclusively in religion, that is characterized by a markedly strict literalism, leading to an emphasis on purity and the desire to return to a previous ideal from which advocates believe members have strayed. While some characteristics of fundamentalism draws back to the 7th century in the religion of Islam, precisely to the time of the Kharijites, the modern connotation of the term relates to the more recent 20th century, when a movement to defend the quote-unquote fundamentals of belief was initiated within Protestant circles in America. Despite the alleged increased spirituality claimed by religious fundamentalists, liberals' main criticism of religious fundamentalists is their rejection of diversity of opinion as applied to these established quote-unquote fundamentals, which makes the matter of its compatibility with Western liberalism a place of doubt. On the other hand, religious fundamentalists and many critics of liberalism view such assessments done by liberals as quote-unquote invalid statements based on a hollow ideology. They infer that to the first principles of liberalism, specifically utilitarianism, where critics argue against what they claim to be illogical and invalid foundations found in the writings of the early philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who was quoted saying, "You have two lords, pain and pleasure. Pleasure, the only good, and pain, without exception, the only evil," end of quote, which according to them, liberalism as a whole is predicated upon. In addition to the criticism with regards to the baseless liberalism according to religious fundamentalists, they claim that the widespread of liberal democracy to many parts of the world, primarily to Asia, the Middle East, and some parts of Africa after World War II, is intrinsically colonial. They derive such conclusion from the sub-liberal idea of cosmopolitanism, which is defined as the idea that all human beings are members of a single society. The link between the cosmopolitan spread of liberal democracy and its colonial essence per se, according to religious fundamentalists, is that it is based philosophically, historically, and culturally in the Western tradition of liberal thought that is tainted by the history of colonization and the constructed notion of the non-Western quote-unquote other. These criticisms of religious fundamentalists also highlight some of the main points of the arguments debating against the notion of liberal democracy being the default position for human societies. Finally, the complexity of these two ideologies is unquestionable. While the questions of which is better or more efficient than the other are up for debate, what is not debatable, however, is the enormous impact these two ideologies had and continue to have on modern day societies. This has been Ahmed Al-Khaldi. Thank you for listening.